Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast. Has it been since the 300th episode? Andrew, help me out here. He's not going to remember. He has too much
I will. I know I'm pretty sure it's been since the 300th episode because JB, for some reason, during the Knicks' first successful season, decided to go dedicate all of his time to this baseball team of ours that has been driving me up a wall, JB.
Listen, the walking enigma. I'm not going to say walking contradiction because that's not. He's an enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in I don't know what. He is and will always be Knicks Film School. Started this little shack once upon a time. It's grown up a little bit. He is now the. What are you?
Into a mansion, though.
Yeah, right. Listen, I'm in a corner of an apartment. I like the apartment, but I am still in a corner of an apartment. He is the curator, the author, I don't know. What is your official title for the Metropolitan?
I'm like you with Knicks Film School. Pretty much, the curator. We have Blake that edits. It's actually funny. We got a good team, the three of us, Blake and Peter. Peter did the recap. Blake would edit and write.
Yeah.
And then I would, I would do a little bit of each. So we all kind of carry different hats. I don't think any of us could take like one title.
Speaking of hats, I'm glad you're not wearing one. Your hair looks nice. The last time I saw you, you were going for I was
going to Jerry Seinfeld to poop it out, yes. Right?
That's exactly what it was. Oh no, I'm not. I haven't even introduced you fully yet. So you're the Metropolitan, and also more recently a new endeavor with the folks at Isles Fix, which now is associated with Mets Fix, correct?
That's right. Only blue and orange teams that I cover, clearly.
So no, I mean, God knows why would you want to spend any time on either of the football teams in this city?
No, I know. Although they just had a good week. Finally.
I was about to say, tell them about Mike White, JB.
Yeah,
I know they won. The savior, Mike White. Tell them about it.
They had a good, and actually, I didn't go this week because
I thought you go to every game.
That's right. Our family has season tickets, but it was Halloween. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stay home, be with the girls. And so my dad still went without me, and I had to call him a couple times to check in. And so I missed the big win, but I was definitely surprised by that.
I missed it on Facebook. If you posted pictures of costumes, I have not got a chance to go on social media the last few days. Did you dress up?
No, I didn't, which I feel bad about because like everyone in my neighborhood did, because we have this great neighborhood where everyone, like I think, I got the puppy.
Beautiful puppy.
It's a golden doodle. So I'm walking the puppy all the time. And the way our neighborhood works, you can't get within 5 or 6 houses and someone's going to come out and talk to you. And all of a sudden you've made it 2 houses in 45 minutes. Right.
Got it.
But everyone else dressed up and I didn't. So next year I got to pick up my game a little bit, but the girls Liv was an evil Egyptian. She added the evil part.
Okay. I like it.
I guess it was really a Cleopatra costume, but she called herself an evil Egyptian. And then
Cleopatra she was evil, wasn't she? Didn't she start some like wars or something? Or I might be making that up.
Well, yeah, I guess you could. I guess you could go with that. And then Zoe was a spy.
Oh, very nice. See, your girls are very different than. Well, I mean, the one doesn't know what the hell she is yet. She was being confused for a boy for most of the night because we dressed her up as Baby Yoda, and the other one.
Oh, that's so funny. Zoe does a Baby Yoda impression.
Oh well, it's
so we'll have to exchange pictures of all.
Yes, we and then Scarlet Ray was Belle from Beauty and the Beast. This is clearly the content that Knicks fans everywhere came to hear.
Yes.
So you have not been on for a little while. If memory serves, and it was the 300th episode, the Knicks at that time during early February, I think that was during early February, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
Roughly around then. We were having, I remember we were having conversations about how it was cool that like this, it was a cute little story and it was something we could feel good about. And then the rest of the year happened. And again, if memory serves, at that time, the Steve Cohen thing, because I remember we talked a lot about the Mets. The Steve Cohen thing was still relatively new. And there was man, I feel like I'm putting you on blast here. You were like, to have a great owner now, it feels so good. Maybe the Knicks, and it's interesting how the last whatever it is, 7 months have transpired.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, it is crazy that if you think about how long we spent covering not just a bad team, but literally one of the worst teams.
And most dysfunctional.
And most dysfunctional. And part of that, to be honest, and I think all Knicks content creators know this is true, the fact that they are the Knicks, and I'm saying like Knicks in the like sense of how people who don't like the Knicks say them.
Yes.
Also kind of helps the Knicks content creators when they were bad, because it's like you could create content. There's no other team that could be that bad that you could create content that anyone would care about, or that there would be headlines to talk about. And whether you liked how they were covered or you didn't like how they were covered, it was a conversation that was constantly happening. So they're sort of this strange team where, you, even though they were bad, you could produce a lot. And obviously that's how, as we're, what is it, the 2-year anniversary now of the newsletter being paid?
It's 1 year, but one year. I was thinking about this because you started it in March or April of the goodness gracious, the year before, because I ran it for a year and a half before it went paid.
Right. I guess that's why I'm confusing the years. I'm thinking maybe
it's all running together. I was going through this with Andrew the other day, and like, when did you start producing the podcast? I literally couldn't remember if it was like 2 or 3 years. I absolutely, right. It all runs together. But to your point, the reason why Knicks content creators will, and I'll be curious to hear what your thoughts are on whether this is true for the other New York teams that you now have the newsletters for. It's counter programming to the consensus, the consensus being the Knicks are terrible. They're a laughing stock, this and the other thing. Again, in the sense that you just referred to the Knicks as has been the case over much of the last 20 years, except most franchises across, I think, any sport in other towns, cities, whatever, if their team sucks, no one wants to read about it.
Right.
But
they're
here,
no longer part of the conversation. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Here, because we're all crazy, we still want to, like, and it's in a weird way, we want to read about it that much more, which is really, it's funny. This goes back to when I first called you and you were like, hey, I'm thinking of starting a newsletter. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. Why? Because I felt like the coverage wasn't fair and it needed balance. Like things, it wasn't always raining. You know what I mean? Yeah. There was some sun shining through, and it was just a matter of finding the audience. But as you just said, the audience is out there because they want to at least be covered fairly. Yeah, no. And I think with, what we're seeing with the newsletters for different teams is it's basically me as a sports fan, you as a sports fan have the same feeling, right? It's like if we weren't creating content and you wanted to learn about your team, nowadays there's more information than ever. You can go on Twitter, you can go on all the sites, right? But it's like, and then there are sites that try to aggregate. That's what most blogs are. They aggregate news. They take one little rumor and they turn it into a post. But the problem with that is, like, you still have to go and you have to click on all these individual posts to read all this stuff. Some of it's sensationalized. And then you're like, oh, that's nonsense. Why'd I click that? That's clickbait. So the gap seems to be, you're a serious fan and you want all of the information. You want to know everything that happened, but then you want it in like a reasonable, non-clickbait way. And I think that's where the newsletter comes in to give you that. And it's weird. It's like these teams are popular, but there's a lot of readers that I think feel underserved for that type of content. And I think that's the thing that's been a commonality across the Knicks, the Mets, and the Islanders. And I mean, especially, the Islanders, I would say, are on one extreme to the Knicks, where How so?
Fans feel, I think fans feel underserved across the board, right? So like you have the Knicks, where anything they do is now a story on ESPN. Like Bing Bong doesn't exist for any other team. Right. And by the way, I tried to show Emily the video and explain to her. And what's funny is I didn't. So she knew nothing. So she was like a perfect sample. And I said, all right, watch this video. What sticks out to you? She didn't even catch the Bing Bong thing because it is such like this like moment in time of it, like of all the noise, this one dude comes in and he says it. And it's funny that is what got pulled from the video.
When I first saw it,
just with the Knicks.
It was the fifth or sixth most memorable thing from the video. But I'm old. We're both pretty old, so maybe
it's
a
maybe
reflection
But
of that.
You can't have that with another team. So with the Islanders, I think that in NHL in general, hockey in general, the feeling is more, why aren't you talking about me more? Right? Like I need more coverage. Where with the Knicks, I think the average fan is saying, stop talking about me
in this way.
Right. I don't want Max Kellerman giving me his hot take. Go away and let me just enjoy my basketball team. And that's where they're different.
Well, the challenge, so it's a good transition to this, talking about this team a little bit. The challenge is, oddly enough, like now the general consensus this year so far has been nothing but good things about the Knicks. I mean, they were, they were 5-1. Now they're, as we're recording this, they're 5-2. But like, I think around the league, people still like, oh, look, the Knicks are good again. And I don't want to say it's flipped the other way, but like there is definitely, I think, a significant segment of the fan base who, who knows if my sense is ever correct, but the sense I get is like, there are issues with this team, and there are clear issues with this team, and they want those issues delved into. Perhaps like nobody needs the Knicks being patted on the back by me, which is strange. Strange to say.
So you're right. It's still the same purpose then, right? Like you're doing kind of counter to what the general coverage is, right? And then you're right. I mean, you can look at it two ways. To me, if you wanted to do like the high level takeaway with the season, on a one end, if you want to be positive, you say the Knicks are 5-2, and you might disagree with this or not, but I think it's common. RJ Barrett has been the best player.
Yes.
So if you just said those two things, 5-2, RJ Barrett is the best player. How could that is the best possible thing you could ever ask for as a Knicks fan. But on the other side, right, you could say they're a Tom Thibodeau coach team who is not really playing great defense consistently.
Nope.
And they're relying on, insane 3-point shooting without having a roster of players that I would say you would expect to be an insane 3-point shooting team. So there are things there that you could argue are not sustainable, right? And then on top of that, with the fact that this is now a team that's more hunted than being the hunter. And I don't want to say hunted meaning like they're a top team, but meaning like there's no longer the Knicks are going to show up. Everyone thinks they're the worst team in the league. So if they just play really hard, they'll surprise someone. Now it's like, if they don't play hard, the other team's not going to give them any slack, because they're expecting that the Knicks are going to come in and give an effort. So I feel like it's that dichotomy of there's the positive, but there's also, I think maybe what you're alluding to is the underlying of maybe they can't keep up that 5-2 record.
Well, here's the thing. I think fans think, look, I'm one of them. I want to have my cake and eat it too, right? I want to think that they are good enough to keep up, like to play better and to keep up this record. And the frustration, like if you don't have the talent, like we always joke about, covering that 17 win debacle of a season, which in a lot of ways was the easiest job I'll ever have, because it's like, there's no misgivings about what we're watching. Like the talent is what it is, you know. And it's easy to be like, hey, I'm going to pick out the one good thing that happened tonight because there's only one good thing, or maybe two good things, whatever. You know, and talk about Frank, digging into the paint, or Mitchell Robinson like looking bouncy. Now I think there is this interesting middle ground where it's like, there is a sense that this team can be great and almost should be great. And the fact that they aren't, but at the same time, I agree with you, are they going to be the best 3-point shooting team in the league all year? That's, maybe not. That said, I do think that they have about as high a ceiling of a team. It's not to say that they don't have a floor too. They do have a floor. But they have about as high a ceiling of a team that doesn't have a top, I don't know which was top 20 player, top 15
top
player.
20 player. Yeah. Well, no, it goes back to, it's those two things. They don't have a top 20 player, and they don't, like I said, it's strange that you would be such a good 3-point shooting team where you wouldn't sit here and say, oh yeah, the Knicks have, where do they have a top 20 3-point shoot? Like, I know percentage wise they do, but in terms of, if you said to yourself,
perception,
here's the player, is this one of the top 3-point shooters in the league? You would probably say no.
I think Walker is a guy that you would have given some consideration for that designation, given,
right?
Because if you look at some of the stats in terms of the types of shots he's taken over the last few years, of really difficult shots, and he has, converted them at a good clip. He's the one guy. And then the other guy, and you already said his name. I kind of, and he's not taking off the dribble craziness. He had one the other night, but is RJ Barrett. But the thing that the guy, not to interrupt, but like guys that you're not sitting here thinking like the bomb squad Knicks, right? Well,
like,
it's not Duncan Robinson or
right.
Steph
Like
Curry
you went
or something
into
like
the year and you were like, oh yeah, like they got these guys, they're going to live and die on the free. It's guys that are like, okay, yeah, like then the modern NBA, every team's got a couple guys who are going to be decent 3-point shooters. But the fact that they've become like, that is their, like, this could be, obviously it's 7 games, but that they could be like a record breaking 3-point team. That's what's crazy to me.
So what I want, I think what people want is they, again, have your cake and eat it too. They want the ethos of last year's team where we're going to come in and play every night like we're 20-point underdogs and that we're the team that was picked to finish dead last. That plus the improvements in talent. And I think that's, that's tough to get. And I think we're seeing this. Like there's a reason that the plucky underdog is the plucky underdog. It's because they are the underdog. No, but look, you've nailed it in a couple different ways. It is crazy how far things have come since you started the newsletter way back when like I'm trying to even remember what the format of it was back then. You were just mostly putting in a lot of social media stuff because that was when the Durant like hype was really starting, right?
Yeah, because it started where we're going into the off season,
but not the Durant off season, but like the off season before the Durant off season, if I'm recalling correctly.
Right, I think that's right. And I think I always told people it's like, obviously it's Knicks Film School, the account started as a video account, right? And I always told people it's like, we pivoted just because no one, when you're winning 17 games, there's diehard fans who still wanted the video breakdowns. But the fact of the matter is, you can only go so far with breaking down a player who you knew was not going to be part of the solution, was going to be probably gone next year, and they're playing bad.
Yep.
So it got to the point where like the main content was more, how has the roster evolved? And I think that's why now this year, last year I was busy doing the baseball stuff, but I think this year, as we talked about, I'm excited to maybe get more into the film again, because it's like you actually have a reason to look at the film, right? Like they're not set. I remember one time we were together, I think they were on the road against Utah when we watched that game. And it's like, you're trying
they lost by like 40. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think and if I remember, and it's crazy, you remember these things, there's so many games, but it's like, we're breaking down their pick and roll defense because they were playing Luke Cornett minutes then. And it was this big deal of like what he could do out there. Yeah. And it's like, when you go back to that, you're like, all right, it's a big difference when you're breaking on film to be like, if they figure this thing out, they could win 51 games versus 47. Like that is more fun, obviously. So yeah, we've come a long way, I guess is what we keep saying.
I think it's, but just again, I'm not saying nobody was putting clips on Twitter and the internet before you came along, but you look now and there's a bunch of guys that do it and do it very well. Like the day after a game, you scroll through Twitter and there's just like one thread after another breaking down film. But again, that makes me think of like, what you were referring to before in terms of what people like seek out in a newsletter, or for that matter, what they seek out in a podcast, because there's a million different podcasts out there. Like, what do people, I think there has to be something that, people gravitate to, because again, if it was just about the content, there's a million different places to get the content. It has to be something specific. So, you've, God knows you've been working on the formula for a long time. I got to ask, writing a baseball newsletter versus writing a basketball newsletter, what do you think is the biggest difference?
Yeah, well, the biggest difference, there's a couple of things. One is obviously it's every day they're playing a game, right? So you got to figure out how to pull out, there's a lot of noise in an 82 game season too, but like now you're doubling that in the number of games playing.
It seems very intimidating, to be honest with you. I like having off days.
Right. You have the off days, but the other side of it is you're constantly at least getting game content, right? So I know there's a lot of fans that feel like I could do without the rumors. I could do without that stuff. Just give me the actual game content. And obviously baseball gives you plenty of that. The Mets versus the Knicks is interesting because it's just totally different, especially on social media. It's like, I would always joke with Emily. It's like, I could sit and write something, and I did a lot of analytical stuff. I'd spend a lot of research, and I could do it, and I could sit back and be like, this is one of the best things I feel like I did in terms of like researching and feel like I found a different angle and I made all the graphics work, whatever. Yeah. And then I would share it out, and it's like you would get, 14 likes and one retweet. On the Knicks, I could spend 2 seconds coming up with the dumbest thing I could think of. But because it's the Knicks, it's like it goes crazy. So I think there's a different animal on social media. And then because of that, with the Knicks, you got to keep yourself from just wanting to feed that beast of like, I think right now with, and we were talking about the Bing Bong, it's like that concept of we're going to get on social media if we act like idiots and react to a regular season win, right? The same fans who are Yankee fans, right? Who will make fun of another fan base who will get excited about a regular season win. They'll say like, well, come talk to us when you win a World Series, are the same fans that are sitting here going nuts on a regular season win. But the point is, it's because of that social media aspect where the NBA and the Knicks generate a lot. So like, it's easy to want to tailor your content for that because you can get broader exposure. Where with the Mets, you didn't get that same response. So I think it made it where you're like, okay, you just got to feel confident in your content without getting any reassurance from how people react on social media.
Well, but there's a difference between feeling confident in your content and getting your content read. And I think that's the part where like social media is, we don't have to get into a whole social media thing. God knows we've talked about it a lot in the past, but like the NBA, it is a social media sport much more than anything else. But the interest, like, so like I just don't have a lot of time for it anymore. And quite frankly, I am much happier that I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. And I've gotten to the place where it's like, I could just produce my content and then let it speak for itself. And I don't have to spend as much time. I mean, I'll send out my tweets, promoting whatever I'm working on. But in terms of like engaging in the discourse where it's just like, you kind of I don't know, you just end up beating your head against a wall. At the same time, that's how you kind of really understand or really realize where the conversation is. The thing that I struggle with the most is when I'll be watching a game or I'll be like analyzing stats or I'll be doing whatever I'm doing. And I'll be like, okay, here are the things that seem important to me right now. And this is, I think, where maybe it's different than baseball. And I'll have those opinions. And then we'll take 2 or 3 minutes to scroll on Twitter and I'll be like, wow, that's not what people are thinking about or talking about at all. They're focused in on this other thing that I personally didn't think was a big deal, but is like driving people up a wall or whatever the case may be.
That's a great point. And I remember in the heat of running Knicks Film School Twitter account, and I guess I'll start with the other point. I'm the same way with you, where now I prefer to do without being on Twitter all the time. But it's almost like without Twitter, Knicks Film School wouldn't exist. Like it was only a Twitter account for a long time. That's all it was. And the idea was, this is how people consume content now. They no longer go to blogs. So let's make a Twitter account that's basically like a blog. It's going to give you videos, graphics, and news all in one thing. And you just scroll and you get it. So there's a part of me that's like, how do you turn away from the thing that without that thing, you wouldn't be where you are, right? But then there's other part of what you're saying where I remember in the heat of Knicks Film School where I always had this feeling of, I wish I could just turn off, if I read no articles and read no social media and just watched the game and then wrote as if I was writing in like a diary to myself, how would I cover the team differently? I used to think about that a lot.
That's
and I think you're touching on that point of, I think you would cover it differently. And I think that is valuable because it's a smart person covering the team and giving a unique perspective rather than reacting to, well, this is the conversation, so I have to write about that.
Well, I think you should split the baby. And what I personally, at this point, this may evolve, and this is actually a good transition to actually talk a little bit about the team itself, is like, I think it's important to acknowledge whatever the topic of conversation is and where people's excitement may lie, where people's gripes may lie, and then just simply point it out and be like, okay, here's why I agree with that, or here's why I think that that's not something I'm particularly interested in. Which leads us to this team, because again, we've mentioned it before. I mean, they're 5-2 and RJ Barrett is looking like he's going to be a future star. Some people would say that he's looked like a future star for 2 years. I think this is important. This proof that we're seeing, but I think people are really upset. I don't know if upset's the right word, are perturbed, bothered, whatever, not a good thing, with Julius Randle and how he has looked this season,
especially on defense, right?
Well, I think, I think it's the other night again. What was it? The game against New Orleans is where it looked like he really wasn't running back on a couple of occasions. So that was like less than ideal. But like I looked it up even earlier today. Only guy in the league, and I think similar stat from last season, but only guy in the league averaging 20, 10, and 6 with 2 made 3-pointers a game. Like that's, and I get that that's certainly not everything. Like point to any of Russell Westbrook's last 2 or 3 seasons where he was still averaging a triple double, and it's like, who cares? You're not helping your team win. But Randle he's shooting still efficiently from deep, not so much from inside the arc. So that is one of those things where I wonder, and I have to actually check myself and ask myself, like, because like part of me like doesn't want to be too harsh, and I feel like is Randle the guy, like, because we're fans, we always need something to direct our angst at when things aren't going well, and like right, or when things aren't going perfectly, I should even say. And it's like, is that it, or is there a genuine thing here to be concerned about? And that's the tough part, is when you have to like kind of when you look at yourself in the mirror and you be like, I'm actually not even sure what I think. And it's not like the tape gives you some answers, but it also doesn't give you all the answers, because usually the tape is kind of a mixed story.
Yeah, no, and I think that there is stuff that, and this is the classic, right? Where when you're covering a team very closely, you're hoping the value you can provide is you're watching every minute of every night, so you see things, right, that aren't on a stat sheet. So I think with Randle, people who are watching him that closely might feel like there are subtle body language things that make you think that there's something there. So, right. So if you just, like you said, looked at the stats, you would say, well, all right, it seems okay. But there's subtle things that you feel like there's something going on. But then this is where I guess relating to baseball, right? So the baseball, the classic is it's all about sample size, right? It's like, well, it's 7 games, So what is 7 games? You got to give him more time. But you also, I just think it's expectations, which is always the most difficult thing, maybe with Knicks fans a little bit, is just this idea of everyone is scrutinized extra, but also hyped up extra. There's like this counter to everything, right? So there's a bunch of people who gave up on RJ Barrett already. And then all the people who didn't, now this year are extra loud because they're like, see, I told you not to give up on him. And then you have Julius Randle, who we all know he is what he is. He's not a top 20. He's not he's not Patrick Ewing, right?
No.
So, but he is, right. But like he is, arguably one of the best players on the first good Knicks team in a long time. So because of that, it's like, how do you manage the expectations of being that? Like if the Knicks were to win 50 games this year and win a playoff round and Julius Randle leads that, it's just because we've been waiting so long for a good Knicks team, and then he would represent potentially, we were talking about RJ Barrett, but potentially the best player. I just think it's hard to manage the expectations because he suddenly gets put in that realm of you are the best, one of the best players on a good Knicks team. So now I have to evaluate you that way without realizing, yeah, that's true, but this is a different type of Knicks team. They're winning without having a Patrick Ewing.
I also, and you just touched on something like, so I'm going to detour us, but I'm going to bring us back. I'm working right now on, and actually in Wednesday's newsletter, it will be I'm going to reveal the first player on this list. I'm going to count down the top 75 players in my very humble estimation of in Knicks history. And I absolutely, when I was trying to make this list, factored in fans' perception. And there have been certain guys over the years where just like fans are like, give me all the stock of that guy. Like good things are going to happen when that guy's in the game. And it's oftentimes not guys who put up numbers. And when it is guys who put up decent numbers, then they're legends, obviously. Right. Like an Anthony Mason, for instance. Anthony Mason put up a little bit of numbers, not Ewing numbers, a little bit of numbers. And he's like, no one is going to ever say a bad word about him. In any case, because people, I think in this town in particular, when a guy always plays the right way, it resonates so much. And I'm not to say that like Randle like always was, because God knows they were Andrew, you feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. How many post games did we do last year where Julius Randle was, even after he had made the All-Star team, and even after he was like a lock for most improved, and even after he was like in the MVP running, I would get on there and it would be a loss in which he would, shoot whatever, 9 of 24. And fans would be like, Randle's taking too many shots. Randle's isoing too much. Randle's not being considerate enough of like, whatever, getting Barrett as looks, like all kinds of different stuff. And it's like, I don't know if that's different expectations for a top player or if it's just that, like, again, we want to see and we want to know that you are, again, I hate to use the phrase, but quote unquote, playing the right way. And then the last point I'll make on this, and I'm curious to hear what either of you guys think, is it unfair of us to expect guys who are talented, like Randle's clearly talented, he's a very good player, he's an all-star level player, to take that next extra step of also being super talented and being able to score and do all these things, but also not, again, quote unquote, make any mistakes and like always be playing the right way and not like, because I think this is where I'm going to rest on with him. If you are all of those things, then you are a top 10 player, and then you are a legitimate MVP candidate. And like Randle's not, and he's not that for a reason. So I think that's where I'm at with it. I'm curious if either of you guys have any thoughts on that.
Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, so to your first point about Randle and post-game reactions last year, I seem to remember it actually being largely positive during the season.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Partially because Randle just really didn't have that many cold stretches. There were stretches, don't get me wrong, but like post All-Star break, we had this mini like 7 or 8 game run when Derrick Rose still had COVID, but the limitations of the team seemed to be more shining than the limitations of Randle, and everybody directed their consternation at one player that played point guard and wore number 6.
Yes.
The issue, I think, and JB, you tell me if you've picked up on this. The issue, I think, with this season, and we might have to add this to the drinking game, is talking about Knicks fans' PTSD. Anytime you mention PTSD, take a shot. They saw the playoffs. They saw the actual sellout crowds of Madison Square Garden, and they saw what Julius Randle looked like. Now there's expectations. Now he has to show that playoff Randle was not a real thing, that it was just like it took a week off. It's a 5-game sample size. It's not real. And now you have to show us that the actual Randle that exists is all NBA Randle, is most improved Randle. And at first sign, which really has just been a 4 or 5 game sample size, because he's been largely good for portions of this season so far.
It's only been really 2.5, 3 games.
So even if you want to limit it to that, people are then going to bring up like, oh shoot, playoff Randle. I know this road. I know where this leads to.
Yeah.
And that's the fear that's being kicked in.
Yes. All right. So to both of your points, I'll start with Macri with expectations. So one is, it's where you're jumping off from, right? So with Patrick Ewing, you are an all-time great player, a player who entered the league as a savior, who, in the right situation wins multiple championships, almost won multiple, even with Jordan competing against Michael Jordan, right? Because I feel like if the Knicks got by the Bulls a couple of years, I mean, and if you're obviously a diehard Knicks fan, you're listening to this podcast, and I don't have to sell that.
96, 97.
Right. But the point is that he's still Patrick Ewing. But then back then, as Knicks fans know, people were extremely critical of him, right? Yes. Knicks fans, right? So that is going to be constant. Fans are always going to point the finger at the star player. But I guess the difference was being critical of Ewing when you came back to your baseline was he's Patrick Ewing. But being critical of Randle, it's a different baseline. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is Randle is not on that same level. So he's being treated like he is a star player on a good team, which normally means you are a top 20 player. But I don't think he is. So he just is what he is. So that's why maybe for him, the expectations are even more because of that gap. To what Andrew is saying about the playoffs, it's absolutely true, especially in New York, because again, a lot of Knicks fans are Yankee fans. And it's there's a generation that grew up watching the Jeter Yankees, and they thought this is how life was going to be. Like you would go to you'd be a good team, you go to playoffs, you'd win every year. Now, obviously, they're learning that doesn't happen. But the point is, you could have a player in baseball who slumps for 5 games, and it's not uncommon. Mike Trout can have a bad 5 games. In basketball, it's a little different in baseball because I don't think it happens as often that, Mike Trout having a bad postseason the way he has had in the past.
Yeah.
Like that would be like LeBron James suddenly shooting 15% from the field. That would never happen. So I think what is a little different with the sample size in basketball is it's uncommon that a star player regresses as much, or if you want to, regresses would suggest he isn't that good. So maybe I'll instead say struggles as much as he did relative to what he normally performed. So in that regard, it is a little odd that what happened because it's not like baseball where you just have a bad series over a large sample. Usually your best players are going to play good over a 5-game series, and then you just might lose anyway.
Yeah. No, it's very different sports. And you're right. He was very bad. I don't know. I couldn't help but, again, talking about the difference between like stars and role players, and then we could finish up soon. It's interesting to me that, just turning to another player, the other player, I would say, getting the criticism of Knicks fans right now is Immanuel Quickley, who's shooting I don't know, 23% from the field or something.
Which, by the way, who would have said? So if we said 2 years ago or 1 year ago this time, we've said, okay, fast forward a year, the Knicks are going to be this unbelievable 3-point shooting team.
Yeah.
Now, if you had to bet your life, Immanuel Quickley, a part of that, there's no Knicks fan that would say, oh, yeah, no, he would actually not be.
I think one of my preseason predictions was that Immanuel Quickley would finish, let me see if I get this right, second in the league in made threes per game to Steph Curry.
Yeah,
not per game, per 36 minutes. Yeah, that's what.
Because when I was saying to you, it's odd that they've been so good without like a top shooter you would think of offhand. I was biting my tongue about Quickley because it's like he would have been that guy.
Yes.
And again, he's so young, he still might be that guy. But I'm just saying it's odd that they've done it without that.
So, and what's really interesting is if you do, this is something that the tape makes very obvious to me, at least. He and Tom Piccolo had a very good thread on this on Twitter today. He Quickley has played really well. He has shot it abysmally. I mean, you can't shoot it worse than he's shot it. He has played really well. His defense has been good. His playmaking has been pretty good. There's a reason Tibbs left him in the game down the stretch against the Raptors. But he's just not making shots. And there are a lot of fans calling for him to be benched in favor of, whether it's Quentin Grimes or I don't know, maybe Deuce McBride, someone. And it's 7 games, but we're not talking about, if baseball is your analogy, Mike Trout or whatever. Like, this is a guy who the sample size that we have is only 1 year. So, should we give him that rope? I personally do, but I don't know. All this stuff it's just, man, it's very interesting how much, perception and reality, where's the intersection when it comes to covering and reacting to things that are going on. So wait, before I let you go, couple things. I want to get you on the record.
Yep.
For some stuff. Will the Knicks
can I make one? I'm sorry. Yeah. I got to make one more random point.
Please. I love your random point. Your random points are the best.
So I was doing the one side versus Ewing. The other side, though, where we're talking about perception, is isn't it? The other way you can look at it is, isn't it nice finally with the Knicks, where because they had last year and in this small start now, where you can actually start telling stories the way people used to tell stories about players who either left the Knicks or the Knicks passed on. So you could also look at Randle and say, here was a player who on other organizations, even traditionally successful organizations, could not figure it out.
Yep.
He comes to the Knicks and he becomes a star player, right?
Yeah.
You have Obi Toppin, right? Who, is a player where any of these like random games where he does something good, if he was on any other team and the Knicks had passed him up, everyone would be, if he was on the Spurs, everyone would be like, oh, that would have been nice if the Knicks had him as coming off the bench, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no. So I will say with Randle, that the other way to look at it, I'm comparing it to Ewing to start, but the other way to look at it as, here is a player who for whatever reason couldn't get it all together anywhere else. He comes here and he became his best maximized self. And to do that with the Knicks after all we've been through is a satisfying thing. Anyway, but now I'll let you go.
It's not. But first of all, can you imagine if the Knicks had done what the Lakers did and literally let him go for nothing, like did not extend the qualifying offer, just told him to go take a walk, and then he finishes 8th in MVP. We'd be apoplectic. Although I guess tit for tat, we did take Kevin Knox and passed on a couple of decent players. So, it all evens out in the end, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully, and I think proof is in the pudding. This front office has pretty much gotten almost everything right since they've taken over. Oh, okay. Get you on the record. Are the Knicks going to make you have a couple of choices. Are they going to be a home court advantage team, so top 4 seed, playoff team, so top 6 seed, play-in team, so 7, 8, 9, 10, or I don't want to even ask you if you think the Knicks are
the other one. Yeah, I mean the safe bet I feel like would be the top 6, right? Okay. I feel like that
is the safe bet.
I feel like that's the safe bet. So I'm gonna have fun and say they're gonna get home court.
Wow. I like it. I like that's bold.
Right?
I was
you know what it is though? Because what it takes, and we used to talk about this in terms of what we wanted as fans. When a team finally turns it around, yes, there are instances. We know another team that might play in a borough that you now live, that just, they make roster moves where it's obvious that they're going to make that jump. But a lot of teams that aren't doing it that way, that make the jump, usually it's kind of a surprise, like last year, right?
Yep.
So if you're kind of continuing on that trajectory and how they've even started, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't you expect, based on what we've seen with this current leadership, that you can expect the better, right? Like, why do we have to always, I'm talking to myself and I'm talking to you, why do we always have to expect the worst with the team we root for, right? Let's expect the best and say they're going to get that 4 seed.
You should take your own advice. Okay.
I have the answer to that, by the way, JB.
Why?
Well, because you talked about expectations being Yankee fans' fault. Because Knicks fans are also Mets fans, expecting the worst is indeed part of our DNA, as you know so well.
Right. We know well. But that's what I'm hoping. Both these teams are on a path that I think they can turn that. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
Give me your a year from now when we're talking about RJ Barrett, we are talking about what? What are we saying?
I think he's still going to be a player who is the type, like when you watch him play every day, you have a different feeling than if you're just an NBA fan. Yes. Because we know, I mean, obviously on Twitter now, it's almost become like the commonplace thing to talk about, but like his defense, if you're not on Knicks Twitter and you're just an NBA fan, I don't think you're thinking of RJ Barrett's defense, but if you're on Knicks Twitter, you're talking about that all the time. But I think he's still a player that you have to watch every day to realize who he is. So meaning I don't think he's necessarily like, okay, here's a definite bona fide star, but who cares? Like it's those type of players that good teams have. And then maybe we're a couple years away from him getting to that point.
One more Knicks question, then one more, and then we'll let you go. So you brought up star. What is it? So by this time next year, the Knicks will have traded for a star. Yes or no?
I mean, it seems like this is what we've been waiting for.
That's why I'm asking you,
right? And them to be good. Because it's the NBA, I'm going to say they probably will, because crazy stuff always happens. But I'm saying that the reason I said because it's NBA, because I want to be clear about this. I'm saying that more as a product of how the league operates than that I think that this current front office leadership is looking to necessarily like, we have to do it at all costs by next year.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I think there are opportunities the way the league is right now where you can actually, it's a rare case where you could be a really good team that can go far without having a top 5 player. That hasn't happened often. I think we're in a window right now where you might be able to do that. And because of that, it's a little different where I think we went, we've had it, right? Where it's been LeBron, it's been Shaq, it's been Kobe, it's been Jordan. I mean, it's not that right now. Like you can't go on the street right now and talk to a person and say, we all know the Bucks just won and everything, right? But like, I don't think most average fan, like casual fans are like, who's going to win this year, and they're telling you, and they're going to be right. Oh, yeah. That doesn't happen in the NBA. That doesn't happen.
We are in a bit of a strange time because it's like the perception is like LeBron's still the best player, and like I'm not sure if that's true anymore. And his team like isn't playing particularly well right now.
So you could argue that this is a weird window where you can maybe be just the team who's been together for a while, has a lot of really good players. Yeah. And again, you might not be the best team, but sort of going back to the 90s Knicks. And again, I know they had Ewing, but like you could be this team who's at least getting to the conference finals. You're knocking on the door, and somehow you could do it without having a top 10 player. Maybe that changes the calculus a little bit, but again, it's NBA. So anytime you think like there's any stability, or you think you define how it is, at least to me in the last like 10 years, some star player is going to be like, oh, no, I'm going to change the whole thing. You can't count on anything. And because of that, to me, anything could happen.
It's only a matter of time to the next Woj bomb. Okay, last one. Speaking of star trades, I believe, and I'll lean on either of you for this, the Mets trade for I believe the young man plays shortstop. That was the biggest trade in baseball over the last year, right?
Trading for Lindor.
Yes,
Francisco Lindor.
You'd have to say that.
No, it was interesting because they traded for Lindor and they traded for a starting pitcher, Carlos Carrasco. And the idea was this was going to be like the first Steve Cohen's owner. They do all these things. And then, of course, Lindor struggles out of the gate. Carrasco gets hurt, and then he's terrible. So to Andrew's point about expecting the worst, the Mets made a trade that there was no person, I'm not even going to say objective, there was no person that even knew baseball just a tiny bit would have said this trade is bad for the Mets. And then somehow for the first year, it didn't work out like they wanted. So that's expecting the worst.
My question is, when are the Mets going to hire the person that will be making trades from now on? Because they have not yet hired a person.
In the time we've been recording, right? So about 45 minutes, I got two, because now instead of Knicks notifications, I'm getting my Mets notifications, right? I got two notifications about new reports of people they might interview who probably aren't interested.
Yeah.
So that's the latest Mets world, right? Who are they going to interview that won't be interested?
JB, at the last town hall we did for Patreon, I asked every single person that logged into Zoom, would you like to run the Mets?
Yeah, right.
Because that's where we are right now. I have no idea why they can't get a high profile candidate to run a New York City baseball team with the richest owner in baseball, not pro sports, because Ballmer has more, but still like the second richest owner in sports.
Yeah. No, it's great. And it's funny. This is where there's a similarity to the Knicks. There is a section of Mets Twitter now who is very upset that Mets fans are upset about these news about they can't hire a big name person, because they're like, oh, this is ridiculous. Everyone's overblowing it because it's the Mets and it's Cohen. I mean, I guess there's parts of that that's true, but like there is a story here that, like you said, everything you just laid out, how do you not get one of the top candidates? It just seems like if Andrew Friedman stepped aside from the Dodgers right now, it just seems unlikely to me that they would have trouble getting a top candidate to go run that team.
So I always thought that there was a candidate of a team currently playing, which is why I was like, all right, patience, wait till some teams get eliminated. Wait for, maybe they are looking at someone at the Dodgers or a team that's still in the hunt. I was kind of patient. We're now down to there's 1 or 2 games left in the baseball season, and you still haven't even hired a GM. There's like this interim thing with Sandy that you don't know, like, is he hiring his replacement? Is he hiring just the GM? And they still don't have a manager. Like, that's the other part, is then you have to make personnel decisions, and then free agency has to begin. There's all of these dominoes that then have to fall.
So my understanding is they couldn't get the actual Billy Bean. What if they just hired Brad Pitt to?
Yes.
You know what?
They might be stuck with that.
You know what? See if Jonah Hill's free. He's got the guy that actually came up with analytics, even though it's been around since the 60s.
Listen, I'll say this. If Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill ran the Mets, I would be a lot more interested in the Mets next year. I would watch.
There you go. It would at least make it entertaining. It'd be good for the newsletter, right?
Oh, gosh. My only my only wish, and it might be unrealistic, is that they give Beltran another shot, like an actual shot at redemption here. So that way he doesn't go someplace else, become a great manager. And it's like, oh, remember the guy that was the Mets manager for 3 months before something he did?
Because we've seen it with Cora, right?
Yeah.
We saw Alex Cora.
AJ Hinch is currently a manager in baseball, you know?
They come back and Cora, and you're right. Yeah. And Cora especially did obviously unbelievable things with the Red Sox team this year. Which I was at that Yankee Red Sox game where the Red Sox won the playoff game. And that was, even though I'm not a Yankee fan, obviously.
You were at the wild card game?
Yeah. And I was not enjoying that moment because I still do not like that. I'm a weird fan where I dislike the Boston teams more than I dislike.
Okay.
Because I grew up in Connecticut. So in Connecticut, it was split Boston, New York. So I was mostly New York. So therefore I root against Boston. But I was reminded talking to Sox fans how great Alex Cora was. So that's why I just thought of that. But anyways, yeah, Beltran, give him another shot. That's what you're thinking.
It's the one wish I have. If you want to hire a no name or an unknown to run the team, just like he's also going to be eligible for the Hall of Fame in a couple of years and probably going to be a first or second ballot. There's a good chance he goes in as a Met, which means they'll be retiring his number. And I'd like that awkwardness of, hey, remember that time we hired you and then fired you within 3 months and you never got a chance to manage again?
Yeah.
I'd rather it be like, hey, Mets manager that we rehired and then started to have successful seasons with, you know, let's honor you that way, you know?
It's a good call.
But what's funny, and one last point, I guess, is that Atlanta fans talk about their team, like you said, because they've blown these games. But as Mets fans, it's odd to hear that a Braves fan acts like they don't win. Because granted, they haven't won the World Series, right? But all they've done is won.
Even I can appreciate this.
Right? They just haven't won a World Series. But all those fans are like, you know, like, oh, woe's me. Like, I can't believe it. They never win. And they're all sitting there acting like, you know, the Dodgers are going to beat them again. They were literally, at least in our section, they were acting like Mets fans, like, how is this game going to blow on us? And I'm sitting there thinking, it just shows you that every fan base, and we'll connect it to the Knicks to put a bow on the podcast, every fan base, no matter how fortunate or unfortunate you've been, they think that their team is the one that is cursed and bad things are going to happen. It's just like natural. Even
not the Lakers,
fans, right?
The Lakers are the Lakers are the one team.
You underestimate Lakers Twitter, John. The screenshots I've seen of them being like we had to struggle all those years with the Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball,
that was
Julius Randle lineup.
That's a small
they had the
subset of idiots.
But even Red Sox fans, like, think about it. All that team has done is win. That's all they do. And they still act like they're these big underdogs. And then Yankee fans are the same way, right? And it just shows you could win 1 million championships and you're still sitting there being like, oh, because it's the Yankees, because it's the Red Sox, because it's the Braves, fill in the blank. So I guess the moral of the story is that, at least as Knicks fans, we've had legitimate reason to complain so that when the Knicks do finally win, this wasn't like, oh, the Knicks were like the Red Sox where they were good every single year, they just didn't get over the top. Or like the Braves where they were good every single year, they didn't get over the top. This is a team that the fans stuck with them when they were literally the worst team for several years. They didn't make the playoffs in a league that over 50% of the league makes the playoffs. This is not like the Red Sox. This is not like the Braves. When the Knicks finally win, this is a special case. That's my bow on it to bring it back.
I thought you were going to say the moral of the story is don't watch sports because it causes nothing but pain.
And it's short for fanatic for a reason. Yeah, I like the bow.
But it's also, I'm giving Knicks fans credit to say there is a difference when you're following a team that wins during the regular season, but then loses in the playoffs. So you have pain that you should have won, but you didn't. Versus following a team that gives you nothing, that literally says, I'm going to win 20 games and then blow a draft pick and you're still going to watch me. And that's what Knicks fans have done. So like, I just feel like, I know people get annoyed that aren't Knicks fans when, you know, Bing Bong and we're on ESPN to bring all that back into it. But it's like, guess what? We've actually been sitting here through all of that crap. We've had nothing.
Give us our bing bong. All right. Well, anyway, before I let you go watch the World Series, and I'm going to go sit and watch Heat Mavs. JB, you have some stuff to plug before you get out of here.
Yes. Yeah. We didn't talk about Isles Fix. I did want to bring that up earlier. If people have stuck with our baseball talk this long, right? But no, obviously we have Isles Fix that just launched. So if you like Knicks Film School, you like Met Fix, we got Isles Fix, all the blue and orange. It's a great team of writers there. So make sure you check that out.
And that's at ISLES
right.
FIX.
And if you followed Isles blog, Isles blog became Isles Fix.
Okay.
So if you followed Isles blog, so basically if you're an Islanders fan, you probably knew Isles blog, and then now you can get everything in a newsletter every morning. So yeah, just go to Isles Fix, and you can figure out where to sign up and go from there.
And Mets Fix Christ, you got mentioned on the broadcast. What could have been more thrilling?
Well, I had to keep up with you and Breen, right? So it's
listen, the Breen. I'm still waiting to get a name drop on MSG Network. I think I might be waiting a while, but no.
I never talked to you about this, John. I almost thought we were gonna get it on ESPN when Go New York, Go New York, Go was playing during the double overtime game against the Celtics, and Van Gundy goes, the best in-house song. I thought he was going to be like, I was just talking about this on Knicks Film School.
Next time. Right. Next time. All right.
I mean, Breen did pull out the bing bong. So, like, why can't he pull out Knicks Film School?
He did pull out the bing bong.
He sure did. Yes.
He sure did. Okay. JB, this has been awesome. Thank you for coming on, everybody out there. Make sure you go. If you're an Islander fan, if you're a Mets fan, and you're not following Mets Fix, Isles Fix, do yourself a favor. You will not be disappointed.